Coming up, the Prime Minister and the opposition leader face off. Hundreds of Abaco students still unaccounted for. Plus, the latest in the Shane Gibson trial.
Our news is brought to you by Alive.
Welcome to our news and thanks for joining us. I'm Vani Tood. Topping news tonight, debate on the mandatory evacuation bill quickly descended into a heated back and forth between the country's political leaders today after the Prime Minister accused the opposition of seeking to politicize everything, including matters of life and death. Despite heavy criticism of government's response in the aftermath of Hurricane Dorian, Dr. Hubert Minnis insisted officials couldn't have moved any faster.
I told the member and I told him in unhealthy language that I cannot repeat here. So he knows. I told you to your face. I told you to your face.
Talk of unhealthy language and political colors made its way onto the House floor today as Minnis kicked off debate on the mandatory evacuation bill. The gloves came off after Minnis accused the opposition of politicizing Dorian's aftermath and insisted some were engaging in political gimmicks and games.
They seek to politicize everything, including, sadly, matters of life or death. Some were intent on displaying the flag and color of a single political party.
Opposition leader Philip Davis hit back, asserting it was Minnis who showed his political colors in the days leading up to the killer storm. He says he struggled to get in contact with Minnis to be briefed on preparation efforts.
We're talking about wearing colors. You wore the colors. We never wore the colors, Mr. Speaker. I called him, tried to reach him. Never called me, not once.
And thank you, Honourable Member.
I wrote him 2 letters.
The heated back and forth only deteriorated after that.
Mr. Speaker, if you were to clear this room, turn those TV off, I would tell you exactly.
It prompted House Speaker Housen Moutri to spring to his feet and admonish the 2 MPs not to allow the debate to descend into name-calling. However, Minnis took one last parting shot.
If I knew you calling me and you not being able to hear my voice in your ear, I would call you immediately afterward. I did not know you'd get so upset. I like you a lot.
Parliamentarians are debating the Disaster Preparedness and Response Amendment Bill, which proposes that residents who refuse to leave mandatory evacuation zones would face up to a month in prison or be fined $500. The bill would also enable government to impose curfews and restriction of movement.
The purpose of this legislation is to help save lives when we face storms and to maintain peace and order afterward. Dorian's impact, Mr. Speaker, has reinforced that what we as Bahamians do before storms could determine whether we live or whether we die.
Minnis noted that ahead of Dorian's passage, many residents in portions of Grand Bahama and Abaco did not heed government's warnings to evacuate. He added that many residents have died and others are still missing 5 weeks after the monster storm, which sat over Grand Bahama for over 30 hours. Minnis also hit back at critics who insisted government did not act quickly enough in the aftermath.
But once the all clear were given, they immediately were dispatched. Mr. Speaker, if that is not fast enough, you can only arrive faster if we were in the Star Trek era. Beam me up, Scotty.
Though 1,400 displaced students have registered for school since Dorian hit, the Prime Minister says the Ministry of Education is still in the process of tracking down the remainder of the 2,500 students who registered at schools in Abaco before the Category 5 hurricane.
Some of these students are in other family islands. Some are in private schools. Some went directly to government-operated schools in New Providence and did not come through the Thomas A. Robinson Stadium for registration as requested. Approximately 300 students remained in Abaco, not all of whom are in schools, and some students have traveled to the United States. We know also that 50 students are at schools in Andros and that more than 150 are being accommodated in Eleuthera. Tragically, it is also likely that there are some school children among the persons still not accounted for in Abaco.
Additionally, Minnis says 100 displaced students attempted to register for school but have not yet been placed in New Providence schools because they did not have national insurance numbers, which is a requirement. He also announced that government will spend $6.4 million to create a family relief center designed to provide temporary housing for displaced families near the Spring City subdivision on Abaco.
The Family Relief Center will comprise 250 dome structures that will include plumbing, drainage, a sewer system, and electricity. And each dome, Mr. Speaker, can accommodate between 2 and 5 individuals.
Dramatic moments unfolded in the Supreme Court today as the primary witness in the Shane Gibson trial insisted he wasn't dishonest about paying bribes to Gibson and Deborah Bastian to fast-track government payments owed to him. Ash also detailed why he previously told the court he feared for his life. Jasmine Brown reports.
Businessman Jonathan Ash was back on the stand for another full day of cross-examination. Lead defense attorney Keith Knight QC spent much of the day hammering Ash on his previous testimony, asserting he had been untruthful on several occasions. Knight told Ash that he was lying on Gibson for a number of reasons, and one of those reasons was to protect Deborah Bastian. Ash vigorously denied Knight's assertion as he stood with his hands folded staring at Knight. The Jamaican QC then asked Knight if he had a good relationship with Deborah Bastian. Ash responded by saying they had an okay relationship before adding, her and Mr. Gibson had a better relationship. She was retired and he brought her back to NIB. She told me that. Knight then read a biblical scripture that centered on confessing your sins in order to be cleansed of all unrighteousness. Ash said, "You are lying, not me. I know I am speaking the truth. My statement, the WhatsApps, the texts, the shingles, I rest my case." Knight then asked Ash about him assisting Gibson in his constituency. Ash told Knight, "You ever heard the saying, when your hand is in the lion's mouth, you just don't yuck it out? You take your time." Knight also asked Ash when was it that Gibson demanded money, and Ash responded by saying the demand was made through Bastian on the same day that they met Gibson at his ministry on Meeting Street. Knight told Ash that he was lying about every single thing he said about Gibson demanding and receiving bribes. He also said Ash was lying about meeting Gibson at different locations to give him bribes. Ash denied it all, saying, "No, sir, I was not lying." Knight also told Ash that he was making up a story because two things were on his mind: immunity and his frozen bank account. Ash insisted that was not true and that they could take the money and he would still testify. The jury also had a question for Ash. They asked him why he had previously testified he feared for his life. Ash responded by saying when he was doing storm cleanup work under the Christie administration, he was told by the government to hire workers. He said most of the employees had ankle bracelets and a curfew. He also testified that there were also members of One Order, Fire and Theft and Raiders, and that when he did not have their money on payday, there would be issues. He said as a result he had to hire police for protection on payday. Ash also testified that after Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis spoke about the contracts he received in the House of Assembly, he began getting death threats and photos of dead bodies sent to him by a local entertainer. Knight also asked Ash about customs infractions. Ash had previously told the court that in addition to owning a trucking business and heavy equipment business, he also owns a customs brokerage company. Knight asked Ash if the customs comptroller had found he made a false declaration in 2013. Ash responded yes. Knight then asked Ash if that meant he did not speak the truth. Ash responded by saying, "If someone gives me an invoice, I can only go by what they give me." Knight then asked Ash about submitting a false invoice in 2017. Knight asked, 2017 was the same year you gave a statement to the police against Mr. Gibson. Ash responded yes. Knight then changed his line of questioning and asked Ash about messages he sent to former Financial Secretary Simon Wilson. Knight pointed to a text Ash sent to Wilson on February 2nd saying, "Good day, sir. Help me get pay. I have to pay my workers." Knight then pointed to Ash's bank records that showed that between February 3rd and February 21st, 2017, deposits ranging from $195,000 to $226,000 went into Ash's account. Ash responded by saying he never denied getting paid in February. Knight responded by telling Ash all those payments came after you paid Simon Wilson. Ash responded, "No, sir. That's what you say." Knight then asked Ash, at the time you were calling for help, you were giving bribes to others? Ash said yes. The matter continues before Justice Carolita Bethel on Thursday morning. Reporting for our news, I'm Jasmine Brown.
Residents of Dundas Town, Abaco are still reeling from the devastation caused by Hurricane Dorian 5 weeks after the monster storm's passage. Kyle Joaquin visited that community where residents say things have been at a standstill.
Boy, tornado came in and ripped off the roof, but hey, thank God for life.
Carlos Alvarez enters what's left of his family's business establishment every day, still in awe of what's left behind. Their convenience store, once a beacon in the Dundas Town community, now left with just 4 walls and a few scattered items.
Yeah, man, we try our best, due to the circumstances, people could still need some goods.
Right.
So we could try our best to provide to the community and do our part.
So a lot of this stuff is still good. You can just clean them off and sell them.
Yeah, we still can sell them. Yeah, man, we still have customers coming by if they need anything, rice. Thank God the freezers and the cooler still working, so we still have cool drinks. And we still have frozen meat to sell to the public.
Here in Dundas Town, Abaco, the roads have finally been cleared, but all around us, the damage is still very real. Just take a look at some of the homes. For many, if not all of them, only the foundation or the frame has been left standing.
Driving along this road situated near the sea, the devastation is evident. Church after church, home after home, all ripped apart. But walking along the street out of Dundas Town was Miss St. Paul, who survived Dorian in a school and recently returned home after spending weeks in Nassau. We found Paul and her husband trying to leave the settlement by foot in search of any tiny food store that may be open.
Right now, I ain't got nothing to cook, but I eat. Yeah.
All right.
So we are now with to see.
But you can find to eat?
Yeah, no, we're looking for something like, we look at food store look now. They said it could be open in like 2 or 3 weeks, and we try to walk and look at it.
Up at Central Abaco Primary, there is a setup by the World Food Kitchen. The school is guarded by heavily armed police and Defense Force officers. It's here where the international community has set up to facilitate the distribution of food, water, and personal items like underwear and deodorant. Foreign aid has been critical in relief efforts for this island. Clint Linden, a deacon now living in his church after his home was destroyed by Dorian, was happy to get his hands on relief supplies.
Oh, they're awesome. They're awesome. They're doing a good job. Nobody can go hungry.
Just in the corner, staying in 2 little tents for the past few weeks, are these 2 men from New Brunswick who represent World Hope International. They left the comfort of their home in Canada and traveled to Abaco by boat, where they have been providing clean water for drinking and washing.
We're here. We're going to provide what we can. We're not going to try to build a comfort zone that's above everybody else. So we're grateful to be able to be here and just be providing. So the tents, we're not sleeping a whole lot. We're running the system pretty much probably 20 hours a day.
We were doing like salt water to fresh water, but then we found working with the town, they've been pumping us water that we're able to clean and get ready. But the community is just so gracious in the stories of the people here. They've just really been through something. We're just glad we can come down and help.
In this community, even the strongest of homes were unable to withstand Dorian's wrath. Though their homes are ripped apart, the bond among many residents is as tight as ever, as evidenced on this porch where several friends who lost just about everything sat listening to Michael Jackson. It's there that they feed, entertain, and look out for each other. Brian Adderley says it's like one big family.
Well, I kind of do it or say it as my fellow Bahamians would say, we are a resilient bunch of people. And we don't say die, ever.
From Dundas Town, Abaco, for Our News, I'm Kyle Joaquin.
Health Minister Dr. Duane says government may be forced to bury the bodies of those storm victims who have not been identified. Jillian Gray reports.
The health minister said they are looking into burying those who perished in Hurricane Dorian. However, no plan has been set in motion just yet.
At some point in time, once it's agreed and the public consultative process has been completed, then based on international best standards, the plan would be to place in a respectful way the remains in a burial site where they can be retrieved if the identification process takes place subsequent to burial.
The death toll from Dorian stands at 61 and is expected to rise significantly as search and recovery efforts continue. Dr. Sands said should they decide on burials, it will be done humanely, stressing that there will be no mass graves but properly identified plots.
We have remains in our possession at the Princess Margaret Hospital that have been there for more than a year. So as long as they are refrigerated, they certainly can be kept indefinitely. Clearly, that is not the ideal. And we believe that once the appropriate public education process and interaction with the public has been adequate, that it is not unreasonable to allow these souls, these victims, to have the appropriate resting place for their remains.
He added that they are continuing to refine the missing persons list, as some on the list may or may not be among the deceased. He also gave an update on how many families have received the remains of their loved ones.
We have one body, I believe, out of 9 in Grand Bahama, and then the remaining bodies would be in Abaco, and I think we now have, I could get myself in trouble, but I believe the number is 46, I believe. But without having the data in front of me, I would say that that is a cautious 46.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Jillian Gray.
Still to come, the National Security Minister insists police are in control in Abaco. Stay tuned.